This is called My Muse Lounge. The theme is motherhood to nationhood. The brains behind this is Her Excellency Hajia Khatija Abdullahi. She is actually the host. I am the co-host, but she's not around, so I'm sitting in her seat today. I hope I do justice to it. So when she came up with the whole aspect of motherhood to nationhood, if those who know Hajia Khatija, she's one of those who looks after the nation, who thinks about the nation, who's a mother. And, as mothers, the nation belongs to us. We are the ones who actually take care of the nation, build a nation, bring a nation together. So with all the challenges that are happening currently, the social challenges, psychosocial challenges that are happening in society, in communities, she looked at it and said, I need to do a podcast that will actually speak about these issues that people actually sweep under the rug, don't want to speak of, don't want to hear, don't want to know. So, I thought to her, I said, you know what, this is quite exciting. It's something that it resonates also. And I just say again, I just hope I do justice to it because this is her brainchild. So I'm going to start off by introducing our guests and a brief profile on our guests. I'll start with Dr. Uche. He's a distinguished health management consultant renowned for overseeing the well-being of diverse workforces in multinational corporations across sub-Saharan Africa. With a medical background and additional qualifications in health services management and occupational health, he's recognized globally as an expert in health planning and management, often speaking at international conferences. Dr. Uche is well-traveled and deeply involved in global health initiatives. He has served as the global co-chair for the Health Committee of the Society for Petroleum Engineers, offering a valuable advice during the COVID-19 pandemic and actively engaging in counseling, mentoring endeavors across various levels. So welcome, Dr. Uche. He's a friend, he's a colleague, means a lot to the SI group. So thank you and welcome. And thank you for accepting to be on our panel today. Thank
you, Maimuna. It's a pleasure to be here. Right.
Thank you. Barrister Jade. Barrister Jade is a prominent legal practitioner and the lead partner of Law Geek Legal Abuja in Nigeria. Apart from overseeing Jolivia Business Group and Speedy Josh Logistics, she is the executive director of Jade Olisa Foundation and holds certifications in various fields like dispute resolution, digital marketing, web app development, and executive protection. Jade is actively involved in numerous projects and serves in various capacities, such as General Counsel member for Women Community in Africa, legal advisor for organizations like Patukwa Waka Development Initiative and Sagama Construction and Engineering Limited, and a dedicated member of multiple legal and empowerment foundations and associations. Jade's contributions extend to drafting simplified domestic violence laws and fostering legal development initiatives in Nigeria. So, Barrister Jade, welcome. She's also part of the family be on our panel today. And then we have Mr. Kevin Murphy. Mr. Kevin Murphy is actually a friend of Hajia Khatija Abdullahi. Yeah, also he's from the US. He's a creator, a diversity, equity, and inclusion champion, and a true servant leader, emotional leader who is passionate about advocating and guiding and transforming people in the best versions of themselves. So welcome, Mr. Kevin Murphy. Glad to have you on board. I'm glad that you accepted to be a part of our panel today. And last but not least, our renowned VP. We call her VP because she is the vice president of our women community in Africa. It's one of our advocacy arms. It's Dr. Dali Adetone. And she's a seasoned professional with a background in accountancy and managerial psychology, has diversified her expertise by acquiring a diploma and a PhD in transpersonal mental well-being counseling. Her unwavering passion for education is evident through her continuous pursuit of knowledge, including her enrollment at the African Institute of Leadership and Strategic Development in Abuja. Dr. Dali's commitment to youth empowerment spans over 2 decades, showcased through the pivotal roles in organizations such as Children Impact, Women Community in Africa, and the Project Impact Nigeria, while her love for the environment is reflected in her active stance as an environmental enthusiast, complemented by her interest in traveling, reading, and networking. So, We have a beautiful panel with great experience and expertise, and I'm sure they're going to do justice to this subject today, this topic of discussion. I don't know whether I introduced myself. Sometimes I do forget. So I am Dr. Maimuna Salim. I am your host. I am part of the SI group of companies. I am a great friend and a sister to Hajia Khatija Abdullahi. Yeah. So without wasting any more time, I think we should just begin. I mean, I think people are really excited to listen and to hear what we've got to say about this silent violation. And if you look at it, right, sexual violation in the home, and how did we come up with this topic? A lot of people would ask, how did we come about this topic? And it's more of, if you look at what is going on in society, if you look at the news, what social media, there are a lot of obstructions with regards to people's behavior and what they do. And one has to be very cognizant that the world has evolved so much that we come from different cultures, we come from different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, and we have this thing that we tend to judge people on things that happen in their home, but we don't know the context of it. And I listened to a story the other day about a violation in the home, a silent violation in the home when it comes to the brother and sister relationship. And this is where I stood back and I said, what does this mean? So I want to pose this question to Dr. Adetone. Dr. VP, I'd like to ask you, when you saw this topic in your head, how would you contextualize this, the sexual violation in the home?
I said I was excited when I heard the topic because so much happening within the home in as regards sexual abuse and violence wants to be swept. The family wants to sweep it under the carpet. Wants to sweep it under the carpet. And over the years that I've worked with children, marginalized and vulnerable children, worked with women that have been abused and all that, I've come to see that the major challenge in the area of sexual abuse is what I have tagged familiar danger. Meaning that the danger of sexual violence, the perpetrators are familiar to the victim and survivors of this very sad act. You find that in the home setting, the husband abuses the wife. Some husbands even abuse their children. You find neighbors abusing younger people and young adults, children, teenagers around them. You find uncles, house helps, grandpas, grandmas in certain instances. I remember talking somewhere several years ago, and this grown adult man said he had been abused by his aunt, who would usually put him on her laps and then play with his penis. At that time, the boy did not know that he was being abused until he became a dad and he attended one of my awareness campaigns, and he realized that he had been abused. So I think silently not doing anything about the abuse in the home has caused it to be on the increase, for one, caused it to be on the increase, and it's really eroding self-confidence, self-esteem, and leading to depressions and all kinds of mental illness. I remember a secondary school girl, I think she was in GS1. I went to talk in their school, and I realized that two of our uncles were abusing her. Two of our uncles, our mom's younger brothers, were abusing her. And it became so painful that they weren't even living with them. It was whenever she went to them for holidays. And unfortunately, her mom had died. And during the holidays, she would usually spend time with one of these uncles. And this girl said there was no way her dad can be told so that her dad could intervene and stuff like that. So a lot is happening silently within the home. Some mothers even know that the husbands are abusing the children, yet they want the children to suffer in silence and keep quiet. They want to keep their homes. I don't know what kind of home they want to keep. They want to keep their husbands. I don't know what kind of husband. What do you want to keep a husband that is sleeping with your daughter? What would you want to keep that kind of husband around for? So a lot is happening within the home setting, and with increased advocacy in the area of parenting that we are doing both in communities and in elitist environments, we pray that we begin to see a change. I remember during the COVID, where all of us had to stay at home, there was a large increase of reports. And when there's a large increase of reports like that, you can safely assume that many more happen that never get reported. So it really saddens the mind that a home that's supposed to be a succor for the child, a place where the child feels safe the most, feels loved the most, feels contented the most, has turned against the child. And if we are talking about the home, I would like to also talk about the school, because those two environments are where the children particularly spend more of their time, in the home or in the school. And those two places have disappointed the children, because some children also in the school face abuse. They are victims and survivors of this abuse. So the familiar danger that the children are exposed to, both at home and in the school, must be stemmed, so that we can have children that will be vibrant in their emotions, vibrant to face challenges, overcome challenges, and leave their marks in the sands of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Dali. And you said a lot there. You spoke about abuse, you spoke of violation. So I want to pose this question to Dr. Uche. The aspect of one, speaking about violence, abuse, and violence and abuse. How do you define those two? Is it the same thing? When you talk about, it's not a violation. When one speak about violation, I am violated and I'm abused. Is it the same thing? Can we conceptualize it as the same thing? Because when we speak of a violation in the home, sometimes we find that the sexual relations of the siblings or the parent to child is consensual. And how would we now define? Can you elaborate on that?
Right. Again, pleasure to be here. The topic is, this conversation is timely, and I hope to learn from everyone else on the panel, by the way. And I hope that eventually people get to join. When I saw the topic, I noticed that it said violation, not violence. So I realized that was intentional, and because sexual violation, it could be not violent, right? It doesn't have to be violent, but it's a violation. It's a violation of the person's rights. It's a violation of the person's innocence. And if you look at it, eventually there are people who are not in a position to say no. There are people who don't even understand what's going on. So there was no violence, but it's a violation regardless. Like the case that was cited by Adetong about someone who didn't realize was being violated by a female relative. But that didn't change the story. Maybe he enjoyed it. Okay, so to that extent, I would say they are not exactly the same. Violence is violence. Violation is any kind of defilement or I would say usurpation or maybe gaining advantage, sexual advantage without or just because you have some other kind of advantage over the person and you leverage it to gain sexual advantage over the person. Whether the person consents or not, it doesn't change anything. I think the person has been violated.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uche. That was fantastic. So somebody said on the chat now, they said, I just want to read what they had mentioned here, to say that sex with a minor is not consensual, right? It can never be consensual. However, you find in certain homes, and I want to pose this to Mr. Kevin. In certain homes, you find that a brother and sister sexual relations happen. Sometimes the sister is the one who is the elder one, and they do it for years. This is a story. This is a real, true life story where they're having sexual relations for almost all their life until the girl decides she's going to want to get married, and the brother says no, she cannot get married, and the mom only found out when it was time for her to get married, and she had to tell the mom what happened. And the mom then said that the son should actually be taken in for rape. And then there was a dispute on that. So, Mr. Kevin, I would like you to speak on something like that, if you know any stories of that nature. And what was the mother's role there then? Because we speak about motherhood. Where was she? Did she not notice these things? Was she not cognizant, aware of these things happening in her home? So I'd like you to elaborate more.
I think, when you have that type of dynamic in the home, and you start to explore what would lead to those type of relationships, is there environmental learning that is taken place in the home? Was there something that was witnessed previously that led either through culture, through the family, through exposure to another relationship that would lead the children, or you said the brother and the sister, to believe that was something that is acceptable within the relationship? Or is there a predatory relationship where somebody is taking advantage because they have either they're stronger, they're in a position where they can leverage their desire on another, regardless of what the consequences are associated with that. And from a parental standpoint, although it may be difficult, because I'm sure most parents, they want to see their children thrive and grow, but when you see that those type of practices being practiced within your own home, and someone is suffering from that, it makes it very, very difficult. But at the end of the day, one of my roles as a therapist, and it goes back to the Hippocratic Oath of doing no harm. So when I look at relationships like this and how they manifest, you always, I'm always putting the patient or the person in the forefront of what's in their best interest. And as a parent, that's what I'm looking out for my family. As a husband or a wife, I would hope that there's similar thoughts on that as well. And from a big picture view, is this a systemic problem within a community, within relationships associated with the exposure of this type of practice? So if there's something that's going on, within the home, regardless if it's my child or not, and it's against the law, I would still do the right thing, which would be bringing that to the attention, and then start to go through the healing process of processing through that, because with those type of traumas, and I guess in some regards you could make argument where there may be consensual relations, but when you're exposed to that, it's teaching what's healthy and what's not. What do we, how do we raise our children, and how do we raise our families and our cultures and communities? So in that type of situation, it would be bringing to the attention and like I said, start that healing, teaching process of processing through because you don't want it to be generational or to continue on to the next generation of children in the family.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Kevin. You said something, you spoke about trauma, which is very relevant. And there's a fine line, right, between where you say it's consensual and it's violation. And why do I say this? It's because we are sexual beings, right? And there's sexual attraction with people. And, in certain countries, there's about 11 countries where incest is legal. That means sexual relations that happen between family members is acceptable, and we frown upon them. So, Madam Jade, you being in the legal fraternity, and I'm sure you're exposed to a lot of stuff under the gender-based violence and child sexual abuse, etc. But looking at the aspect of violation, have you dealt with any cases of this severity, talking about violation in the home sexually, and how do you all look at it in the legal aspect of it?
Hello, Dr. Vams. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on the panel. Well, looking at violations, there are a lot of issues with violations in the home. Let's leave incest aside. We still have issues like marital rape that is not covered under our laws. A situation where a woman is married and there are times you are not in the sexual mood to have sex, and you have a husband who feels that I have married you, so you must succumb to my will every time I want sex. And there have been instances where women have been raped in those circumstances, and they cannot come out to say, my husband raped, because our culture, religion, they do not frown at these things. They make it seem like it is normal for the man to want those sexual satisfaction at every point in time. And they make it look like, oh, if you're not, as a woman, every time your husband demands sex, you should be able to meet up to that. That in itself is a problem. Although we have aspects of the VAP now that, criminalizes marital rape and makes it a crime, but how many women will want to come forward to report that their husbands have raped them? So those in itself are the problems that we have in terms of the law and violations. And then looking at incest, there are certain cultures in Nigeria where incest is, somewhat allowed. You hear things like, we want to maintain the blue blood in our family. So you have sisters sleeping with brothers because they want to birth the same offspring without interference. So we don't want an outsider to come in. So they match each other. There are certain cultures where even first cousins marry themselves and they have children. And these things do not in any way pose as a crime. In fact, it's like an unspoken thing that there's an understanding that brothers and sisters can meet to have. And then these things go on until we're able to confront our cultures, our religions, and certain things that it permits. And we're able to take certain decisions in respect to cultures that are repugnant to equity, good conscience, and natural justice. That's the starting point to having these conversations about silent violations in the home. let's move a bit towards domestic violence, and which is also a part of a silent violation in the home. It's only a few people who are a bit enlightened who can come out to say, oh, my husband has, violated me, has abused me, has assaulted me for the longer time or for the longest of time. In Nigeria here, when a woman still goes to the police station to make a formal complaint against the husband for even beating her, it's still looked at in certain connotative ways as, you, this woman, you're a problematic woman. Why are you coming to report your husband at the police station for doing this? Is a family matter. This is something that can be handled. But until we begin to confront these issues and look at them for what they are, crimes that they are, that's the only way we can make a headway. There have been a couple of, I had a conversation with someone very close to me recently. And, a very senior lawyer, he told me, he said, I didn't even know how I lost my virginity as a man. I just knew that I had this older cousin who was always, touching me inappropriately. I didn't even know it was abuse because I was just a child and I really did not know what she was doing. It was up until I grew up, to understand the things that she had done to me. That was when I knew that, oh, she had actually abused me. There are certain circumstances. If we take a census today, I would say 60% of our boys cannot trace how they had their first sexual encounter. They can't trace it, so to speak. So women can recollect to say, oh, this person was my first love. But most boys cannot tell you, this is how I had my first sexual encounter. It's always, one auntie in the family or one older person in the family who started touching them inappropriately, and then it led to a lot. In fact, there was an instance I came across with recently where a boy of 13 was being touched inappropriately by an aunt, and then she got pregnant in the course of the whole touching inappropriately and all. And, the family was trying to say, oh, the police shouldn't get involved. This is a family matter, and all. They're going to resolve it their own way. And then, of course, I had an instance, a recent case, where some boys, 12, 13, were sodomized in a school in the FCT. And then when we sought to push for the case, the parents of the boys said, no, they don't want the discrimination that will eventually come to their sons over an allegation of, rape and all of that. But those boys were abused. And even their parents were not willing to offer them to go through therapy. Those children can go up tomorrow and then decide to also make out what had been meted on them, on other people. And so the cycle continues. But those are like the baseline experiences that we have when it comes to silent violations in different homes in Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Madam Jane. That was quite interesting, and I'm looking at the part where you speak of the marriages where women are so vulnerable, and that it's supposed to be a consensual thing when and the man says it's my conjugal right, that you are actually not giving me my conjugal right, and the woman says I'm not in the mood, and the man says it's my right, and the woman cannot go out there and actually complain, and if she does, it's an issue. However, I would like Mr. Kevin again to speak about this because he's more in the West, and I think there are also rights for women there. And how would that work in your country, in the Western society, in your legal fraternities? How do they look upon something like a violation of the woman in the home, in the marriage, in fact?
Well, that's something that is starting to really kind of draw more attention to, not just, within the home, but within the culture and within society in general. Where this is my body, I'm the owner of it, and, no means no. No is a complete sentence. And are there still situations where that is still taking place? Yes, there is, and it's like I said, it's something that is really drawing a lot of attention, and there are women and men in situations, you know, a lot of times it's viewed, if you're a man, that you can't be abused in that manner, you know. But what we're finding through research is it happens more often than you would think. And there's a whole another conversation on you know, that in itself, because many, like I said, many people believe that a man cannot be sexually violated in the same manner that a woman can, you know.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that's still part of the challenges within marriages within the United States and within culture, and you know, it's developing healthier relationships. So, you know, what do we expose our children to environmentally as they grow into what looks like a healthy relationship? And it's something that has always been very challenging with the United States, especially when it comes to sexual trauma, sexual assault. You know, sometimes those things aren't really viewed in the same manner as they are outside of a marriage, because the thought of it is you went into this relationship without being forced or whatnot, and so you're not viewed in the same manner as somebody that's not married, or the challenge associated that. So you don't see as much being brought to the legal system, filing complaints and so forth. A lot of it is handled differently. But as the woman's voice has grown, you know, within our culture and communities, it is something that they're fighting for, to be in control of that. And just because I'm married to this person and I still love them, when, you know, I don't feel that I should be forced or coerced into, you know, just fulfilling their needs. And so it's something that I think globally we're all looking at, you know, how do we create these more mindful, loving relationships, you know, where we're all valued.
Yes. Okay. But that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin. And, you know, when you mentioned that, because I think wherever you look at it in the world, we all have rights, right? Individual rights. And it's how now these rights are navigated into the family system. Because what we find is that a lot of family systems, they take these things for granted and people turn a blind eye. And Madam Dayton, I would like you to speak on the aspect of motherhood in relation to this violation. Where does the mother come in? What is her role? How does she now try to curb this from happening? Or our mothers, are they not educated enough? Are they not equipped enough? They do not have the capacity to be able to understand that this is happening in their homes. So I'd like you to elaborate on this, Madam Dayton, Dr. Dayton, sorry.
I liked when you asked for the Western view of all of that. For the African setting, the woman is seen to be subject to the desires, the whims and caprices of the husband. And the woman does not have any right to say she's tired when the husband says, let's have sex or something like that. Okay, be that as it may, what I've seen is that many mothers, it's not as if we are not aware, it's not as if we are less educated or things like that. I think one of the major problems for women is empowerment. Because for the African setting, you still find families where the male children get the priority to be educated, get the priority to learn some form of apprenticeship, while the woman, the girl child now, is considered less of an investment. when you send her to school and stuff like that. And like the joke in the country, she belongs to the kitchen and the other room. And over the years, I found out that when a person, be it a male or female now, lacks empowerment, there's a limit to how his or her voice will resonate and be accepted or make sense anywhere. So women are at a disadvantage because of the lack of empowerment. And because not being empowered financially has reduced the strength of our voice, the quality of our voice. It makes non-effect our views over certain issues. Imagine a woman whose husband is violating her daughter and she still stays on in that marriage. If you ask the woman, she will tell you, where do I start from? If I leave this home, how do I feed? How do I clothe? How do I take care of those children? And then the legal system, I think Barrister Jade can clear me up on this. The legal system will not award the custody of children to their mothers who are not empowered. So usually a few men would misbehave because they are protected under the law, simply because they have a source of income that the woman does not have, a source of income that can cater to the needs of the children. So they depend on that and get away with many of their misbehaviors. Unfortunately, we mothers, we advocates now, as the case is, we must continue to sensitize women on the need to fulfill their roles as mother, because I don't think I would call somebody a mother who sees her husband violating her child, who sees her older or younger brother violating her child and wants to keep quiet. I don't think that is, I can't call that person a mother. That's not motherhood. Motherhood entails you going all out for the younger generation, all out to ensure that the younger generation fulfill they get to the peak of their potentials. So it's going to require a lot of sacrifice, a lot of heartache will be. You have to take decisions against even your own sentiments, correct, emotions, and feelings to ensure that these things are done. So it's not as if we don't know what is going on or what we should do, but the major thing I see is that lack of empowerment. So we must encourage ourselves to get busy so that our voices can resonate well when we stand against the ills in the society. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, I know you have your NGO Children Impact, and you deal with the marginalized communities. You deal with these homes where they have these kind of abuses, and yet, you still find we're on the back foot. And because, culturally, people are hiding behind the whole cultural element of things. And yet we are in a progressive society, yet we are exposed to so much. And I just want to look at the whole aspect of what because we have these violations, what measures can one put in place to, besides like empowerment, what other measures can one look at to be able to curb these violations in the home? Dr. Uche, I would like you to respond to this one.
Yeah, thank you, Maimuna. And I've been listening to everyone on the panel. And like I said at the beginning, I had in mind to learn a lot. I am learning a lot. So thank you all. So first, I'll tell you, irrespective of culture, because the cultural perspective is heavy, I've had an expatriate, somebody from some other part of the world, family working in Africa, and the 12-year-old daughter was violated, sexually molested actually, and was taken to a hospital. I sent them to a hospital, gynecologist confirmed it. And so the investigation started. It narrowed down to the fact that it could only have happened within the family. The moment that became clear, the parents moved to withdraw the case strongly, because it was an embarrassment to the family honor was at stake, and I understand where they come from. Some other part of the world, they would go on CNN and let the world know that this happened. Okay, so the cultural perspective is big, but irrespective of culture, there are damages. Okay, there is confusion as to, should this happen? Is this right? Why is this happening in the family? There's loss of trust. Family is where people should trust one another. So there's loss of trust. There is fear. People live in fear because someone has been threatened. If they dare to talk about this, there will be consequences. So there's fear. As a matter of fact, sometimes there's a sense of guilt because you know you've done something wrong.
Yes.
Allowed to talk about it. So people live with all kinds of mental health issues, psychological trauma, different perspectives of it. And then there's a loss of the sense of self-worth. Sometimes that makes people, not care too much and become sexually vulnerable the rest of their lives. So whichever way it works, okay, it turns people into dysfunctional adults in their relationships in the future, one way or another. But so what we're doing is the kind of thing we should be doing: raise awareness, let people know, first of all, that this is wrong. Okay, let people know that it is destructive. Let people know that it's better to talk. It's better to talk, and then you start your healing, and then let families know that they must be supportive when there are victims, and then they need to also allow the law to, let people be held accountable, even if they're family members, when they're sexual predators. So I think we can begin from there. It takes time, but hopefully, eventually, things will change.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Uche, for that. I love when you said it's destructive, because if you look at something and one goes through trauma, it's like a wound that you get on you, and it doesn't heal very quickly. It takes time before it heals, and it takes one event or something that will trigger it again, and now the wound opens and the person starts doing things that they're not supposed to. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. There's a girl who was violated by her brother and her father. And this is a true story. And she became very promiscuous. She went for the healing. She got some, what you call it, trauma counseling, etc. And she got married and she was fine. However, every time she saw her brother, she wanted to have the sexual relations with her brother, her uncle, her cousins. She wanted people within her family. And her husband tried to find out with him, she would not have relations with him, and he wanted to know why. So eventually when he found out that this is what happened to her. She was violated, and this wound was opened up again, and it just was like a little pandemic or parasite that would just grow in her, infest her. And she continued wanting this, and apparently her brother, it was violence, sexual acts, and she enjoyed that. And it was something, I think on Dr. Phil or something, I watched it, and it was so bad that she wanted violent sex all the time. So how does one come back from that? How does one heal from that? And we have a lot of stories that we hear about these kind of things. So as a doctor, you've been in the medical field. How does one heal?
Right. So isn't it ironical that what you'd normally think that people should run away from, something in them has changed the way they should see it, and now they want it more and more. First, there's a loss of the sense of self-worth, first of all. Okay, and then the human mind is very complex in the way it works. So when we find someone in that situation, you've got to do some debriefing. Okay, you have to get a psychologist, make proper diagnosis. It takes a long process. Find out where they are right now, and then walk all the way back to how they got there, okay, to how it started, what they remember, what experiences they've had, what different kinds of feelings they've had over the period. And then you are able to make the diagnosis. Now, when you've made accurate diagnosis of where they are mentally, then you can think there are a few options. Okay, there's a gradual desensitization, we call it. Gradually, you start to desensitize. You expose the person to circumstances, not sets, but ideas, stories. Take the person on a mental journey back to a safe point. and then observe them over time. Okay, and then also there is the more radical approach, which I'm not able to get into, but it's called implosion. Okay, implosion is you drop the person right in the middle of what they're afraid of, but make sure that they are safe. It works faster, but sometimes it has side effects as well. But I think, first of all, it's about understanding. It's about making the right diagnosis, and it's about getting an expert to take them through the debriefing and then the healing process.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Uche. And, you know, I'm listening to you and I'm just visualizing this. I mean, people going through this whole psychological, you know, trauma counseling and this whole series of interventions to be able to, you know, help them in their lives. But what happens, and Dr. Dayton, I want you to speak around this. What happens if the perpetrator is the mother and she's supposed to be the nation builder? How now do we say this mother is going to now try to assist the nation building when she is the perpetrator? She has violated the child.
In fact, not even being a direct mother of the victim, any female perpetrating this act. Maybe I've read instances of a female teacher abusing a child in class and stuff like that. It's something that we should see that is beneath motherhood, to violate a child, to abuse a child. It's very sad. The area of physical abuse that I've handled severally has been very painful for me. The way mothers treat other children that are not theirs is very appalling. I've seen an instance where a mother was going to deal with, punish her cousin that was living with her and locked her to sleep outside in the compound for 3 nights and to not attend school. I invariably got her arrested for that act. So there are certain things that should be ordinarily beneath motherhood. And I would still like to reiterate, mothers are not people that give birth to children. Is the attribute of kindness, loving, nurturing, protecting, directing, guiding the generations coming up. That is what motherhood is about. It's not about giving birth or giving suck to a child. No, we are reducing motherhood. If and anyone that behaves outside of these attributes of motherhood, even though the person is a female, person will not be said to be a mother, even if the person has given birth to children. So the female folks need to be educated, sensitized, reminded that motherhood is a trophy, is a standard that we must attain to. You don't just get there because you gave birth to a child. No, it is not true. Motherhood is about nurturing, like I said, guiding, protecting, preserving generations coming up so that the society can be better and better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Dayton. So motherhood is about nurturing, protecting, guiding. And, you know, we all know that. And also, you know, we can't just isolate it to motherhood. I mean, yes, this is about the motherhood, but also the fathers of the nation. And they are there to also help build our nations together with our mothers. And Madam Jade, you know, they say we need to put continuous measures in place for the perpetrators who are now violating our children. And, you know, we have moms who violate, like we said, they're not necessarily mothers, but they violate the children. And, you know, the law, how does the law come in to protect these children? Because, you know, we look at perpetrators being mothers more often, like your teachers, your maybe your counselors, whoever they are, but they are female, and people that we look up to as mentors sometimes as nation builders. So where does the law come in here to protect?
Thank you, Dr. Maimuna. I think the law is very clear. Most of the time, these things happen because people are not aware of the provisions of the law. So we need to constantly educate and re-educate our society, children, We need to come up with some more child-friendly versions of our laws so that they can, even the children are able to recite these laws. And so when something they're in a circumstance, they can say, oh, I know that there's a particular law that talks about this, and what you're doing to me is an offense, and I'm going to report. So we need to raise our children to be more emboldened to be able to confront violations and the alleged perpetrators. We need to also teach them to free themselves of the culture of silence. um, our our resolve as Africans had made it become a problem that when something happens, people want it ordinarily swept under the carpet instead of facing the issue head on. So we need to raise our children in confidence, let them know that once there's a situation, that situation needs to be handled. It's not something that's quiet on. So we need to. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So we need to, constantly reaffirm and reassure them to speak up when there's an issue. The law protects, but that's why when there's an offense, it's because every child born within the territory of Nigeria belongs to the state of Nigeria. That's why when there's a crime, it's between the state and that alleged perpetrator. So people need to speak up, and so they can use the instrumentality of the law to get justice. If you do not speak up, and then also another thing I need to point out is the fact that preservation of evidence is what ultimately aids either the success and progress of a case. So if you have a situation and you don't have evidence to um, put in or corroborate whatever the situation is, there's a likelihood for the alleged perpetrator to walk free. And the fact that our communities always want to interfere when there's a criminal circumstance, when an offense has been committed. You see people coming to beg all sorts of plea, making plea, involving religious leaders, calling their pastors to say, please come and beg this person so they can free him from the police detention. We would like to resolve these issues out of court. Not like resolving issues out of court is bad, but when there's a crime that is alleged to have been committed, that crime should be investigated. And if the perpetrator is found guilty, there should be adequate punishment for the offense that was committed.
Absolutely.
Not that everybody walks free, and then we keep having the statistics of people who walk away from doing these crimes, increasingly every year. When we look at the gender violations index, every year that we go through, it keeps going forward and higher instead of reducing. It means that the impact of the work we're doing is not really felt, because if it is felt, we should be having a decline in having those statistics. We should be having a decline in people. Now I've seen a set of people coming up to say that, oh, they are pedophilias and it's a way of life and all sorts of crazy things that people come up with. These things are not known to they're not known to our society as Africans. You can't be an adult violating a child and you want to tell me that that's a way of life. I don't see how that can be a way of life. I don't see how violating a child who cannot consent to a sexual activity, I don't see how that can be a way of life. But not to judge people in their circumstances as well. We need to keep, educating, public enlightenment and empowerment, like Dr. Dayton says. And then I'd like to also correct, she said I should throw more light on that. In terms of custody of children, particularly in matrimonial cases, the court does not only look at the financial circumstance of the parties involved. The court looks at what's the best interest of the children. That's the ultimate deciding factor for every court. So if the court looks at what is in the best interest of the child, whether or not the father of the child is empowered or has some economic power, if he is not the best person to look after the children, the court will ordinarily not award custody. That's why, because in law, the law presupposes that the mother has a nurturing affinity with the children, while the father has a leadership affinity with the children. That's why you see when there are younger children, the court tends more to be inclined to grant custody to their mother, because they believe children are still within the age where they need to be nurtured, and guided by a mother while the man does the provision. So that's the way the law perceives this thing. So even if as a mother you have all the money and the court looks at it, there are the circumstances put before the court showing that you cannot look after those children, the courts will not grant you custody. Same for the fathers as well. So if the court looks at it, there are circumstances, maybe in the course of the breakdown of the marriage, you have been known to be bringing in different women to your matrimonial home. The court will look at all of those surrounding circumstances and custody will most likely not be granted to you. But what happens is that the women look at it from the point of the not having economic power, and then they are laid back. They don't want to even fight for their rights. They don't want to even push forward most of the time.
Thank you so much, Madam Jade. So, Mr. Uche, I know you have to, Dr. Uche, sorry, you have to leave. So I want any last minute closing remarks from you before you leave.
Yeah, thanks. And sorry that I have to leave because I need to join a different meeting. By way of closing remarks, I'll just say you're doing the right thing. You and Khadija, you're doing the right thing. The people, my co-panelists, you're doing the right thing. Bring out your knowledge, your expertise, so we can put the word out there. And everyone who is listening and participating, you're doing the right thing as well. So we need to hear it. We need to spread the message. And then if we come across individual cases who we need to encourage to speak out, we encourage them to speak out. If we come across families where family members are, affected one way or the other, again, we intervene and encourage them to be supportive. So it's been an exciting session, and I would just like to thank the organizers again for putting this together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uche. Thank you for being part of the panel. Thank you so much. Mr. Kevin Murphy, so I would like any closing remarks from you, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to join this conversation with such an esteemed group and panel. This is a very sensitive subject and certainly requires all of our contributions in helping change the dialogue, the conversation, and empowering our communities, citizens, and using their voice in hopefully creating healthier environments for our children to see what those healthy relationships are and to help them better understand when something is happening, that there are resources, there's outlets, they can lean into their family, their parents, their mother, their fathers, to let them know that something is going on, because a lot of times their voices are silenced. And there's a fear.
Yes.
Sometimes they feel shameful of what's happening to them, and they don't feel like there's an outlet. So I love that you're carrying these tough discussions and conversations, and hopefully broadening our abilities and perspectives and understandings of what we view as acceptable and those outlets to try and create that constructive redirection. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
I think your network is a bit reactive. Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin. Any closing remarks from you, Dr. Dato?
So much has been said.
Yes, Madam Dato. Dr. Dato?
Sadly, what Barrister Jade said is that we are not having a reduction in these statistics of violation, of abuse, of violence perpetrated against minors, against women in familiar quarters. I think we'll just have to keep the conversation going. We have to increase advocacy and sensitization. I already put in the chat and increase and do a lot of sexual awareness to this group of people, this marginalized and vulnerable group of people. I think we should not be discouraged. We should just keep at it. I know that certainly with our resilience, we're going to get the safe and wonderful society that we desire. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for today. And that's the great input remarks.
Okay. Okay, so for me, I'd say that we will keep at our sensitizations, and then we also need to now become, because for every law there's usually the intent of the draftsman behind every law. So we need to be able to reduce those intentions that those laws are created for in child-friendly versions, like I said earlier, so that we can pass them around, even probably do like local content advocacy, where we have to have these laws in the native language that are indigenous to the communities where we work. That way, people can understand that if they have a challenge, there's the law that says, this is what I am entitled to as a Nigerian citizen, or this is what applies in my circumstance. The more people know that, the easier it is for us to keep pushing for our advocacies, the easier it is for us to get justice for people who find themselves in the unfortunate circumstances where a violation has happened. The more it is for us to get justice for survivors, and the more it is for us to create a safe space for women and children. Thank you so much for having me on this panel.
Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful, interesting topic, exciting topic. I mean, I don't see any questions from our listeners. I mean, I think this has been something that I've learned a lot. I'm sure most of you also have learned a lot. Something that's going to be continuous. We don't just end here. I mean, as an institute a coalition of NGOs that we work together, we're always looking at these aspects and trying to help and assist where we can to put measures in place and circumvent all the societal issues and challenges that people are having. So with that being said, I would like to say thank you to everybody. We are going to continue the empowerment of women, create better nations, and create better mothers to build more bigger nations and greater nations. So I would like to say thank you again to our speakers, our panelists, and all our virtual listeners. This is My Muse Lounge. My name is Dr. Maimuna Salim, and I say goodbye. Thank you. Take care.